Well, the Mariners are reportedly not going to land Hye-seong Kim, so we're doing Fanfiction Friday again. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Fanfiction Friday, the show where we grade your Mariners trade ideas on the 20/80 scale based on things like creativity, uniqueness, and of course, viability. Before we get into your trades, shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. Kicking us off here on Fanfiction Friday is Relics, who has a deal with the Marlins. Andrew Nardi from Miami for Mitch Haniger and all of his money, plus Michael Morales and Dwell Joseph. And Relics adds would give us a nice lefty in the pen and free up some money to do something like a Luis Robert Jr. trade. So the only reason we would even entertain this, again, we've talked about this in the past, but we'll say it again. The Marlins have to reach a certain threshold. They have to reach, $105 million in payroll? And if not, if they don't do that, the Players Union is going to file a grievance against them. So they do need to add payroll by really any means necessary. So that's the only reason this kind of makes sense for the Marlins, taking on all of Mitch Haniger's money. But this deal specifically, what do you think, Colby?
Yeah, I think it's too light. Because yes, the Marlins need to add money, so there actually is some value in Haniger. But Nardi is a really interesting pitcher. He's pretty good. Now his traditional numbers won't say it, but he had a really good year last year. And again, the Marlins are still adding $17 million. I don't think Michael Morales is enough. Like if we take Haniger out of the equation entirely, would the Marlins trade Nardi for Morales? Probably not. I don't think they would. And so when you add on Haniger on top of that, they're definitely not going to make that trade. So I think Nardi's a good target. I like him. We talked about him. I think he was in our offseason plan, or he was in one of the drafts of the offseason plan.
Yeah, we talked about him a lot.
Right. And so I like the target. I don't think that this is going to get it done because, again, I don't think they would do this deal without Haniger in it. And so when you put Haniger in it, you need to add more. Dwell Joseph is a guy who's fallen off pretty significantly. Still a young guy, still obviously talented, but he doesn't have the shine he used to. So I think because you're trying to get them to take Haniger's money, it's not like they're going to view Haniger as a huge plus for them. If anything, because they need to add payroll, he is just not a weight on the trade. But because they wouldn't do Morales and Joseph or Nardi straight up, they're probably not taking on Haniger's contract too. So I think you need to actually kind of significantly upgrade from Joseph, or you need to upgrade a little bit more from Morales. I still think somebody like Locklear could make sense here. I think
it might have to be even someone better than Locklear.
Yeah, it might be a Harry Ford even.
Yeah, because when you look at Nardi, you're going to see the 5.07 ERA last year, right? But underneath that, the peripherals are really solid, and he's a lefty that strikes guys out. 12.68 Ks per nine last year, 11.46 Ks per nine the year and before that, 3.26 walks per nine, which is fine. And while reliever club control is a much different conversation than really any other position, or club control with any other position, he's still pre-arb. Now he is coming off of an elbow injury that has to bring some concern, but still, this is a guy that probably carries a lot more value than you would think. So I just don't think this gets it done.
No, it's a good idea. Try and get Nardi out of Miami, and Miami is one of the few teams that is apparently willing to take prospects, and they need to take on some salary. So the idea is good. It's just I think your valuation is way too light. So yeah, I think for that reason, I'd probably give it like a 40. Like you're on the right track, but I think you need to up the offer pretty significantly.
Yeah, I'll go 35 on this one. I still think there's quite a bit of ground to make up on that front. Ian has a deal with the Philadelphia Phillies, in which the Phillies get Luis Castillo and Mitch Haniger for Alec Boehm and Taijuan Walker. So you're going to save money on one of those guys, not both. You're essentially swapping Haniger for Walker's contract and then saving money on Castillo. At least I'm assuming, because Ian didn't mention any money going back to the Phillies in this deal. Right. So you get Boehm, you save money, and you take a shot on Walker to potentially backfill.
Yeah. You're like Castillo's a true number 5 starter.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically it's Boehm and $16 million, give or take. For Castillo. Yeah. Moving off of Haniger's contract for Walker's really doesn't do much for me. I suppose it's in there simply to give the Mariners the replacement they need or want. But if you're the Phillies, you're probably not interested in Haniger at all. You already have some guys who shouldn't play in the outfield.
You already have Mitch Haniger. His name is Nick Castellanos.
Right. And, you also have Kyle Schwarber, who shouldn't play in the field either. So, yeah. Walker in the final year of his deal as well? I think he's got one more year after this. So that would pretty dramatically change things one way or the other. To me, trading Castillo for Boehm is too light.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but Walker still has another year after this. Yeah. So basically you're extending the headache that Haniger is creating for you right now for another year, for another offseason.
Right. And essentially doing it so that you can get less than full value on Castillo. Like, no, I'm not kicking the can down the road on Mitch Haniger's contract. We've talked about this. Like, if I'm moving Haniger, I'm not doing it for a guy who's going to be Haniger next year. Like, I'm not going to keep kicking this can down the road. I'll just swallow the cost this year. And then, so what it really comes down to is Boehm and the money you save worth Luis Castillo? No, not to me. It's not. The Mariners might think differently, but I doubt it. And the Phillies, they kind of have their own, not really payroll restrictions they're working through, but they are, luxury tax team. They're inching closer to that third threshold where they start losing draft picks and all that stuff. So I don't know if they're going to be super psyched about taking on $16 million this year. Again, I think you can get Boehm for less. And if I can't get him for less, I just don't want him. So I think for me, the Mariners probably say no. Or I think the Mariners should say no to this. I think the Phillies probably do as well. Unless they're really excited about getting Walker's last year of his deal off their books next year. But because of that, it makes me not interested at all as the Mariners, because, again, I don't want to kick the can down the road. Like, I just want to get Haniger's money off the books. If I can do it via trade this year, great. If not, whatever. I'll eat the money. And then next year, I'll just have it free and clear. So, yeah. 40.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. So 35, honestly. All right, we'll get to more of your trades in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Fanfiction Friday. We're going over some of your trade ideas here for the Mariners. Jeff has a deal here with the Cardinals. Pretty big deal. Comp A pick, Mitch Haniger, Teddy McGraw, Cole Phillips, Cole Young, and Felton Celestin. Jeez. to the Cardinals for Nolan Gorman, Steven Matz, who's there for salary purposes, I would assume, and Ivan Herrera. So a backup catcher, pitcher money to balance out the Haniger deal, and then Nolan Gorman, who's coming off of a god awful year for all of that. I'm good.
Yeah, because I mean, like essentially it's Haniger for Matz. Fine, whatever.
Is Matz on the last year of his deal?
Not 100% sure. I think he is, but I also think he's making quite a bit less than Haniger. So
yeah, he's making 12.5, so it's not as much as Haniger, but at the very least, we're not running into the same problem as the
Walker,
Phillies Haniger trade,
right?
Where at least Matz is a free agent after this year. But yeah,
not much incentive for the Cardinals to do that since they're not really trying to compete next year, although they refuse to make moves like they're not trying to compete next year. So who really knows right now? But yeah, then it's McGraw and Phillips. What value do they have?
Like, both of those guys have elbow issues.
Either of those guys thrown a pitch in professional baseball?
Both of those guys had setbacks this year.
Right. So I don't think that they're really,
no, but it's like Celestin, Young, and the comp round A pick for again a backup catcher, and that I don't need, frankly. And Nolan Gorman, who I had major concerns about heading into last year when people were pounding the table for him with the Mariners, and now he's coming off of a really bad year.
Mm-hmm. I
don't really believe in Nolan Gorman. Like, I didn't last year, and I especially don't now.
Really shouldn't play second or third, which the Cardinals have tried. He's really more of a first baseman. And yeah, like Herrera is a good player, I would say. I mean, he was a 2-win player last year in about half a season worth of at-bats. But the problem with that is that he is a backup catcher, like a pure backup catcher. So for other teams, he might be a really valuable piece in this trade, and they might make a trade like this because
I mean, you could flip him.
I mean, sure, but this is a 24-year-old with 5 years left who has coming off of a really good season last year. Like he might be ready to be the everyday guy somewhere, and including possibly for the Cardinals this year as they move Contreras to first base. So like Herrera in a vacuum is a valuable piece. To the Mariners, not really, because he's not better than Cal Raleigh.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like he's a backup catcher to the Mariners. I don't need that. I don't, and especially I don't like, as nice as it would be to have someone as good as Ivan Herrera being my backup to Cal Raleigh. I don't need that. I don't need someone that good. I don't need to pay that kind of price to get him.
No, and again, you're trading the comp round A pick, Feldman, Celestin, and Cole Young for a backup catcher. You don't really need like a good catcher, but still for you a backup. And Nolan Gorman, like, no, this is way too much to give up. So, again, and for the Cardinals to give up Herrera and Gorman, they probably would like something like this. But for the Mariners, it makes no sense because Herrera is not that big of a piece of this deal. So for the Mariners, they would say, like, yeah, Herrera is great and all, but we don't really need him or want him because we're fine at catcher. What if, are you willing to talk Brendan Donovan now? Are you willing to talk even Lars Nootbaar or Alec Burleson? Like something like that. Because Gorman, to me, can't be the headliner if you're giving up this much. Because I don't trust Gorman. And Herrera, well, Cardinal fans will probably look at this and be like, yeah, well, Herrera is the headliner. Again, he's not better than Cal Raleigh. No disrespect to Herrera. Very few catchers, if any, are better than Cal Raleigh. But for that reason, it makes no sense for Seattle to make a deal like this. So for that, I think it's a 30. I think you need to move Herrera. Like if you came in here and Herrera was Brendan Donovan, like it'd still probably be a little bit of an overpay in my opinion, but it would be much closer to a 50 than what it is right now. Herrera just doesn't carry any water for the Mariners, unfortunately.
Yeah, 35. All right, Matthew has a deal with the San Francisco Giants. Wilmer Flores for Logan Evans.
Yeah, Flores picked up his player option. It's only for $3.5 million, so he's pretty cheap. He's coming off of a bad year, though. Like, objectively a bad year. I believe
first bad year he's had in
a while.
9 years.
Yeah, like Flores is one of those guys who's like first base, really only should be playing first base, but he's not exactly a first base bat, like typical profile of a guy. But like 2023, he slugged 509 with 23 homers. But this last year, again, only 71 games, so he got hurt, but he was a 68 WRC plus. Last year he was 134. Year before that he was 103, and then it was 114, 119, 120. So 34 years old, coming off of a bad year in which he was hurt. You only get him for 1 year. He's only going to cost $3.5 million. So money is not going to be a problem here. Do I want to give up 6 years of Logan Evans for 1 year of a 34-year-old coming off of a bad season? It's tough to say. Like if I felt really good that I was going to get 2023 Flores, then yeah, I would probably give up Logan Evans for 1 year of that bat. But giving up Logan Evans for 1 year of even 2022 Wilmer Flores, it gets pretty dicey right there. So this is a really interesting one because it's kind of how much do you believe in Wilmer Flores? What version are you going to get? And, how much of an impact do you think his bat has? Because Logan Evans, while he's not a major prospect, he's certainly not a throwaway prospect either. And he is right now part of your pitching depth.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to how you feel about Logan Evans, right? And I know there's some people out there that think he's basically just another Emerson Hancock. So if you think he's Emerson Hancock, then fine. Trade him for Wilmer. Take that shot. Cool.
Right. I think he's got a pretty good shot to be better than that, but I think his ceiling is probably like a good number 4. So like this is one of those trades where like if the Mariners made it, you'd be like, okay, like I get what they're trying to do. I understand it. But you wouldn't be like, wow, they woodshed trade for Jerry. No, it's fine. Personally, I would just rather sign Donovan Solano. If this is the type of first baseman, the type of first baseman I can get, I would rather just sign Donovan Solano, who's probably less power, but probably much more likely to hit 280 because that's all he does is just hit 280.
Colby's starting to see the light.
Okay, but so I'd say this is like a 45 because again, like if I saw this scroll across the ticker, like I'm watching Sports Center still. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, like I get it, but I wouldn't love it. So like that's like a 45 for me.
Sure. Yeah, I'm probably out of 45 as well on that. So we have a couple more trades to go over in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Gametime. And that was the case well before Gametime sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Gametime Picks. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Gametime's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We got a couple more trades to go over here on Fanfiction Friday. This one comes from Stan. Castillo plus Garver for Tony Gonsolin, Gavin Lux, and James Outman from the Dodgers. Gavin Lux, kind of a relevant player right now after the Dodgers signed Hye-seong Kim. Yeah.
I picked this trade out about 30 minutes before the Kim news broke. So
there you go. You had the foresight. So Castillo and what was it? What was the deal again? Castillo and Garver?
Yeah.
Castillo and Garver for Gonsolin, Lux, and Outman. Gonsolin's coming off of the injury, right?
Yep.
Outman's coming off of a bad year after breaking out 2023.
Really?
Lux had a really good second half.
Right. We talked about Lux a little bit. Outman really has had a bad year and a half. I think his breakout season, it was really the first half where he was really good. And since then he's really struggled with strikeouts in particular. Lux is pretty streaky hitter, but overall he'll end up being about a league average player, both defensively and in the batter's box. Plays second, you get him for a couple years. Gonsolin you get for 2 more years. He is ARB eligible. I think he had a 2-year deal, pre-ARB deal that ate up 2 years of ARB, but I think he is back in the arbitration process this year. Get him for 2 years. He does have an option left. He has had, some success at the big leagues. His 2022 year was probably his best year. Obviously, he missed all of last year. So you're taking a bit of a risk here. So this is a lot of risk on Castillo, on a Castillo trade, because the only surefire major leaguer you're getting out of this deal is Lux, and his ceiling is probably a 110 WRC plus.
We've probably already seen his ceiling.
Yeah. Right. The real question is, can he do it over a significant stretch of time? More can he do it for a full year? No, he hasn't so far. He's done it for about a month, maybe 6 weeks, but he hasn't put it together all year. And Gonsolin, like I said, coming off the injury, ARB eligible. Not really sure how much you're going to get from him. He's been okay, sometimes really good, sometimes not very good. So that's kind of a up in the air thing. So what this deal might really come down to is, how much do you like James Outman? How much do you trust him? Because I don't trust him that much. So if you're giving up Garver in this deal, in this trade, you're probably Lux and Gonsolin probably are going to make about, I don't know, we'll call it $8 to $10 million next year. So you're kind of almost just basically paying for Garver right there. But you'd be saving about $24 to $28 million, give or take, depending on what the ARB numbers come in at, by moving Castillo and what's left over of Garver's contract. So I guess if you want to look at it as Outman, Lux, and Gonsolin plus $28 million in salary for Castillo is fine. Do you want to trust Gonsolin to be your Castillo replacement? I don't know if you do. Also, now you need to go find a backup catcher, which, isn't super huge, but also I don't think you want Cal Raleigh catching 140 games again. So you really need to find a quality backup catcher. That's going to cost you some money too. So at the end of it, and plus, are the Dodgers even going to want to take on Garver's money? Is the cost just this? Is it just the Dodgers scrap players because they're taking on Garver? Because if I'm the Mariners, I don't want to take less just to move Garver. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting deal. There's a lot of different avenues you can look at it. To me, it feels a little light from a Mariners perspective, but I don't think it's terrible.
Fabian Ardaya just tweeted, as far as how the pieces fit, the Dodgers have said this offseason they are going with the plan of Mookie Betts at shortstop and Gavin Lux at second base. The plan with Kim, the source said, is for him to fill a super utility role. So we'll see if that lasts. That could just be posturing until they make a move on Lux or do something different.
Super utility role for a guy who's the 11th most talented player on that position player group. Good luck.
So I guess that means that they want Tommy Edman playing full-time in the outfield, if that is the case.
Right. It'd be Teoscar, Edman.
Yeah.
I guess Kim could play in the outfield a little bit.
Yeah.
Outman, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I actually do think Lux is available.
Yeah, I would definitely keep an eye on that. I've heard on multiple occasions that the Mariners really like Gavin Lux. They also have Michael Conforto in LA. Remember, they signed him.
Yeah.
And then Pajes, of course. So they do have some outfielders. But yeah, it does seem like Tommy Edman's going to be their everyday center fielder.
Right.
Right now, at least that's the plan. Ryan has a deal with the Braves. The Mariners are sending Luis Castillo, Cole Young, Dom Canzone, and Gregory Santos to Atlanta for Ozzie Albies and AJ Smith-Shawver.
Yeah, I think this is not I think the Mariners aren't giving enough here. I don't see a reason why the Braves would do this, because they're adding significant salary. They're downgrading at second base, and they're giving up a really promising young pitching prospect on top of it. From a Mariners perspective, yeah, because trading Young and replacing Young with Albies is an upgrade, at least in the short term, and probably, overall just an upgrade. And then getting a young arm who's making the league minimum to replace Castillo, like that's ideal. This is about as ideal as it gets from the Mariners, but we have to look at it from the Braves perspective. Does it make sense for them to make a trade like this? I would say no, not right now, unless they love Luis Castillo and they think he is a legitimate ace, then no. Like, I think the Braves do need to add pitching. I really do. But I just don't think Albies is the guy that they would move to do it, as much as I would like them to move him. I don't see it. I don't see the reason why they would pull the trigger on that.
No. I think the Braves, they're going to address their rotation. Seems like potentially with like a Justin Verlander, maybe a Max Scherzer, and then they're going to call it good in that maybe regard.
Morton again, Charlie Morton.
Yeah, and then they're going to call it good in that regard. And I don't think that's something that they want to address, but I think that's something that they're just going to wind up addressing with money. They're not going to trade from one of their they're not going to trade one of their all-star players for pitching help.
Right. It's like, if you're the Braves, would you rather have, Ozzie Albies and Max Scherzer, or Luis Castillo and question mark at second base? Because like you could say, well, it's Cole Young, but Cole Young is a question mark. That's the point. So yeah, you'd probably rather just have, Albies and the pitcher who's not as good as Castillo than, basically flipping your weakness.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see it.
I think this misses the mark. Yeah. 35. Yeah. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.